you could introduce yourself perhaps to our audience, let us know who you are, what you do, maybe some of your inspirations, that would be helpful.
Well, my name is Paz. I've been doing art all my life. I've been showing since about 2004, and I transitioned in 2010. It's been an interesting experience. I deal with all kinds of my art. I mean, it's generally figurative, but it's a lot of psychological stuff, a lot of kind of things that are meant to make people think. There's a lot of different styles. I have a kind of impressionistic, more classical style, but I also have like more expressionistic and surreal and symbolist kind of elements in my work. That it's kind of, a lot of people say my work reminds them of dreams, because it's not exactly surreal, but it's not reality.
I can certainly see that dreamlike quality in all the art that I'm able to see online. And I guess admittedly for myself, I'm really drawn to your artist statements that states here that you believe that art is a way of bringing new ideas into the world. Whether it is art that expresses a mood or tells a story, it is a form of communication. Since the human figure is the main tool we use to communicate with the world, it is the main focus of your art. And I'm wondering, to what degree do you see the figures, the mythic ideas, the dream ideas, as an expression or a way of communicating trans experience, if at all?
Well, I do have quite a few paintings that are specifically trans or androgyny or gender related. I have a few, I mean, it's not the majority of my work, but the majority of my work is definitely there to make you question the world, and I guess gender is a big part of the world that we see. So I guess you get that element in all of my paintings. I have a few paintings that are specifically geared towards that. Like I have this new series of Altarpieces that I just completed one of them just a few months ago, and one of them is called the Gender Spectrum Altarpiece, and it really shows, it's basically the same figure in different stages. I don't know if you saw that one. It's on my Facebook page, but it's one of those pieces that opens and closes. So on the outside, there's the two figures, male and female, and they're covering themselves up. And on the inside, they're raising their arms, and there's four figures, and on the left is a female, the classical, female figure, very round and curvy. And on the other side of the thing is the male figure, and in the middle there's the two really in-between stages. They're like the transitional forms, and it's almost like a perfectly smooth transition with male, female, and everything in between. It could be interpreted as a transition or just all the different genders out there with like intersex as another gender, or just the different stages between male and female as being, genders within themselves. And then I have a few other paintings that are definitely relating to trans women, which, I'm a trans guy, but I think women are more aesthetically interesting to me, just because I find them more attractive. So I have this one piece called Dysphoria, where you see the trans woman, and on, there's the classic scene of the angel and the devil, one on each shoulder, and of course the devil is whispering to her, and he's like the male-looking devil, and the angel is not even facing her, and it's the female-looking angel. So it's the concept of dysphoria kind of in a painting. I don't know if cis people would really understand it, but a lot of them like that piece, but I don't know if they really know what it means,
Yeah, so. Sure. I find interestingly that the dysphoria piece, at least on your website, pazart.com, is categorized under the myths, I believe it is. Yeah, the myth category. To what degree, and I'm hearing the use of altar, and I did see your altar, the Altarpiece, the Gender Spectrum Altarpiece.
The Altarpieces are really new, so they're not on my main website yet, but they're on both, so I'll be making a page for those pretty soon. But yeah, that's a really new project. I've done about 4 altarpieces so far, and it's like my new series that I'm doing, a lot of altarpieces, because last summer I was in England, and I saw some of the medieval altarpieces at the Victoria and Albert Museum, those ones that are very elaborate, and they open up with all the gold leafing and all these things that were made like in the Middle Ages. And I just fell in love with that, and I'm like, I'm going to start doing a lot of altarpieces now, because it was just like, wow.
I mean, and it looks, the work that I see here of yours just looks absolutely incredible. Equally, I suppose, I've not been close to these altarpieces, of course, but at least appears to be equally ornate, just really gorgeous pieces. I'm wondering if between the Dysphoria and the midpoint, the use of altar spaces, a kind of presence of spiritual or religious anchoring here, is there some sort of connection that you feel with religiosity or spiritual component of transition and or with your art?
Well, I definitely like the forms that are used, especially in the art of different religions. And I kind of use that in a way to speak against religion itself, because I think, in this day and age, and always really, religion and superstition is a way of people putting themselves down, and of course a lot of religious cultures are very against trans people, but not only that, they're also against science and progress and really everything that makes life good. So I have this 2 different ways of thinking about religion. On the one hand, it has some beautiful storytelling that I'm fascinated with. On the other hand, I think people that actually believe it and take those stories to be literal, I think that's very dangerous. And in the big paint altarpiece that I did, it's called the Anti-Theist Altarpiece, and it's kind of making fun of that. Well, not making fun of, but pointing to the fact that all these beautiful works of art, they were using their art form to praise religion. Yeah. Whereas, religion is really the reason that a lot of people are killing each other and doing horrible things to people. And so that's what that's kind of depicting, is like, well, yes, the medieval ones are praising religion, but this one is showing, religion is really destructive and hypocritical too. So it's pointing those 2 things out. So that's definitely my take on that.
I see your mixed methods as well. The 3D stuff, what is it that you're using in your 3D sculpture work here?
I have a few different materials that I use. I have basically a series of sculptures that I did starting last year that are basically, they're clay sculptures, but they're suspended in resin. Some of them have lights underneath, so it looks like they're glowing from the inside. So it's really, some people say they remind them a little bit of lava lamps or something like, but they're figures inside of basically I hollowed out the clay after I made like a face or a body inside of the resin, and I put it in a resin mold, and then I took the clay out and I put inside lamps. So it's really like this inner glow that's emanating from the figures, and the figures are always inside of like an enclosed. They're like suspended in water. It's kind of a primal type thing, like when you're developing in the womb, you're suspended in water, so it has that kind of feel to it. Figures are suspended, and some of them are severed at different points, so it's like the water's holding the person together. That's kind of the idea of that whole series. They're really cool to see in person because they really kind of glow. It's really, it's pretty, I don't think I've ever seen any other artist do it quite that way. It's pretty unique style.
I think what I'm really drawn by these statues particularly, they're very, the best word I can think of right now is just like this very haunting look to them. I don't know whether or not these beings that are suspended in this resin, I don't know if they want out or if they want to stay in to some degree.
Yeah, some of them are poking out of the resin. I have a few pieces where the clay, well, actually a lot of them were parts of the figure or some limbs or the top of the head or something are kind of poking out of the resin enclosure. So they're kind of emerging, and some of them aren't, but a few of them are. And you don't really know if they're trapped in there or they're like or it's a birth type of process. Like I was talking about the womb. So that's kind of that idea.
I'm looking at two pieces right now that next to each other are just so incredibly, I think they're really interesting together. The one of them is called Modern Freak Show, and the other one is Thus I Created Woman.
Yeah, those are definitely some of the more trans-related pieces. Well, at least Modern Freak Show is kind of a statement about the way the media sees trans people. And it's kind of showing a trans woman as a clown, and of course nude and with an erection, because they're very sexualized in the media. And what's really cool about that is underneath the figure, you see all the spectators kind of looking in on it. It's shown that that's how people look at trans people, but the enclosure that she's really in is glowing, so it looks like a screen. It could be a TV screen or a computer screen, but on top it has a circus tent shape to it. So it's basically, in the old days, the freak show would come to town as part of the circus, and trans people would be, in the freak show. And these days, the media or the TV screen or the computer screen or whatever screen that is has become that same circus tent. So it's kind of the same image of the tent and the screen all together, and the trans person is in there with, the clown makeup and kind of like gawked at. So that's definite criticism of the way the media looks at trans people.
Is there significance to this cross around her neck?
Yeah, well, the cross is first of all, it's a sign of persecution because the media is like persecuting. Well, I don't know if persecuting, but by showing trans people as being these freaks, it's kind of putting us down. So that's kind of where the cross comes in. Some people would see that as a religious sign, which it could be because a lot of trans people are religious, but I was seeing that more as part of the whole media angle, and the cross being a sign of, persecution and, degrading people, really.
The Thus I Created Woman piece is terrifying. And
yeah, it's a very horror motivated painting. It's very much of a horror piece because she's laying on a table, and you don't really know if it's a surgical table or some kind of, butcher table in some, serial killer's house or something. And she's laying on this table, and there's all these instruments around, like a hammer and a saw and a ruler. So it's kind of ambiguous whether this is supposed to represent like plastic surgery, and we create people through plastic surgery. We change them, and, thus I created woman. Or if this is, you've created her from scratch, and she's some kind of, clone or robot that you've built. Yeah. Well, or you don't know if it's really, someone just going to mutilate her. You don't know what's going to happen, and that's kind of where the terror of this piece comes from. And then there's an arrow, and it says the word top, and it's pointing to actually the side. So some people think that's the top of the painting, but actually that's the side of the painting. And the whole idea is you don't know if this is a direction of how the painting is supposed to go, or the top, or the person who is creating her that's where they are.
Well, that's interesting because I think that this painting here, the I in your title, Thus I Created Woman, is kind of speaking to this weird, interesting tension between who gets the say in how one identifies or becomes trans, whatever that might look like, surgical or not, or hormones or not, or what have you. And so it makes me wonder, even if it's this outsider, because to me this looks almost like a craft table, like it's a...
Yeah, that's why I was getting the idea of the, maybe she's really created from scratch, because I was actually watching, when I got inspired for that, I was watching a show about these people who create, they build robots or sex dolls or whatever, and they think that they're real people, and they've built this creation, and they have a relationship with it, but it's not a real person. But soon enough we're going to have artificial intelligence, and we're probably going to be able to create a robot that seems really real. That's another aspect to that piece where you don't know where real and human begin and where they end. So that definitely has that aspect to it.
Now, I'm wondering, have you had any pushback from trans-identified viewers, audience members, what have you, to your work? Has it been overwhelmingly positive received?
I don't know, because I show a lot of my work in galleries and art festivals and spaces where you don't really know who your audience is going to be. But people that I know myself, who are friends of mine who are trans, really love my work. So that's the only thing I can really go by. But yeah, I mean, when you're in a gallery or an art festival, you usually don't know who's trans or who's cis. I mean, sometimes you can tell, but I get, if people everyone loved my work, I knew I would know I was doing something wrong. Because if you don't push somebody's buttons, you're being very boring.
Have you had much trouble getting into these galleries and being able to show your work, or has it been a relatively? I mean, your work is just so amazing to me that I wonder, have you really struggled to try to find homes for your pieces to be shown?
Most of these years I've been doing festivals because you really get to choose your own stuff that way. You're not controlled by a gallery, both financially and content-wise, because a lot of galleries are, especially these days with the recession, they're going for the most boring, the most conventional, the most easy-to-sell stuff. But actually, this last year, I have been finding more edgy and unique galleries that are appropriate for my stuff. So in June, my stuff's gonna be in 3 different galleries in Southern California, but again, I do love the art festivals the most because first of all, you get to talk with your customers, and it's not a middleman of the gallery, and second of all, you're not forced to have any particular style. Because most galleries have this style, and they're looking for one style, and my stuff is just way too unique, and it doesn't fit into any of these like marketable categories. So it's really much more. It's much easier to be your own boss and just do it's a lot more work to do art festivals than it is to just put your stuff in a gallery and let the gallery owner do it. But it's in a way, it's more rewarding. That's what I've been doing mostly.
Have you ever done any performance art work with your pieces or alongside them or as an extension of your artistic practice?
I haven't done any myself, but I have had people use my images. I mean, just recently, I had a friend of mine who's a musician use one of my paintings called The Most Vulgar Thing Ever Painted. It's part of his music video, and I posted that on my Facebook as well, and it came out really interesting. He was singing and standing in front of the painting. It's a giant piece. It's 8.5 by 8.5 feet, and so it was a really cool combination of the music video and the painting. So I definitely have collaborated with performers.
I can't help but just get these images. Are a lot of your pieces as large as that one, or is that one of a unique piece that was that large?
The more important an image is, I tend to make it big.
I see.
Bigger, because Dysphoria is also a pretty tall piece, about 7 feet tall, but narrower. And then that big Altarpiece with the little turrets and all the decorations is about 9 feet tall, and then it's a triptych, so it's 3 pieces. So that's a very large piece.
Yeah.
But I also have very small pieces. I mean, I have a whole range. I just recently made one of my resin pieces that's maybe only 3 inches wide. So I do have a range of sizes that I do, but when I have an idea that's a really important concept, I like to make it big because it makes a statement.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm running out of room to put all these things. The walls of my studio.
Can you say a little bit about your own experience with art? What do you feel is the importance of art to trans people? Of course, speaking from your experience, but is there any sort of, I don't want to say prophetic, but words of inspiration perhaps, and how you view art as it has linked or informed your own trans experience?
Well, I do think that art, for the person who makes it, is very healing. And especially, whatever your problems are, when you express them through art, it's much easier to cope with them, I think. So it's definitely very healing, and, there's a reason they use it for therapy and do a lot of art therapy because, once you get out your emotions in an image, you can cope with them a lot easier. So that was been a great, gift for me. A lot of people look at my work and they say, "Oh, don't you have nightmares? How do you even cope with yourself with all these crazy ideas in your head and this and that?" And I say, actually, I cope with them much easier because I take them out on canvas or on, in clay or whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
Those demons don't haunt me because they're out there. They're not staying in my mind.
Which is, I guess, exactly how you define in your statement, right? How you see art as a way of communicating, and I think it's some sort of way of mediating those internal thoughts that can then, I guess, somehow escape the mind. So maybe you can better control it, or at least play with it on the outside. Mm-hmm. If I'm hearing you, at least the way that I'm hearing your description here. For someone like me, if I'm interested in purchasing your art, do I just get in contact with you personally about pieces?
Yeah, there's on my website. You can email me. There's my phone numbers on there. Any way you'd like to contact me is fine. Just let me know which pieces you want, and I can ship them anywhere. And yeah, that's how I do it usually.
Well, I thank you for your time, Paz, and for your what I consider really useful words. I always appreciate an artist, especially an artist with such wonderful work. Love looking at what you have to offer us. It's really nice.
Thank you.